Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
Hey, welcome to Wait, That Really Happened, a podcast covering history, true crime, and conspiracy. It is currently 9:42 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I have about 4 different homework assignments that I should be working on, but I don't want to. I'm here instead. And so it takes me actually about 2 to 2.5 hours to finish a podcast episode. So I have a full pot of coffee on deck, so that is my bevy for this epi. And actually, this is a pro tip, if you don't like dirtying up a spoon for mixing things, I don't, I'm lazy. If you put in your milk and your creamer first, you don't need to stir it. It's shocking, truly amazing. So do with that information what you will. Also, I apologize if my mic sounds a little bit different. I switched mics because I have been having a huge issue with background, ambient static. If you listen, you can probably hear it in my other 3 episodes. But I literally can't figure out what it is or where it's coming from, and I'm an audio engineering student, so this will be my job. But I think it's my interface, actually. I think my interface is just really old because I switched cords and I switched mics, and it's still an issue. So it's probably that, but I don't know what it's coming from because there's no AC unit in my apartment. So it's not that. And my windows are closed, so it's not that. But if you do hear motorcycles or cars, that would be the dumb college kids. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about a secret society known as the Freemasons. I've heard the name tossed around a lot, and I think I had relatives in it, but I never truly understood what it was and how far back it really went. Thus, we arrive here at yet another podcast episode. And as per usual, all sources will be in the description boxes in case you would like to find out more information on your own. The Freemasons are basically a male-based sworn brotherhood group that have been around for a very long time. Originally, they started as a guild of skilled builders and stonemasons who built cathedrals and castles in the Middle Ages, with the first recorded mention of them being in the Hallowell manuscript, which was published in 1390, but have since moved on to become mostly made up of powerful, rich men with philanthropic ideologies. The idea is that the Freemason men are quote-unquote better men. They are noted to be the world's largest secret society, but everyone kind of knows about them, so I wouldn't exactly call them very secret at this point. In 2020 in America, there were about 898,000 members, and worldwide, there were 6 million. So once cathedral building became less popular, kind of in that transition from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, they started accepting honorary members, which allowed for the growth and change into the more modern society that it is today. Groups of Freemasons in one area are called lodges, and the Grand Lodge was created in 1777 in England. The Freemasons do their best to be removed from any religion, though it follows a similar ideology of a religion. In order to be considered for acceptance, you must A, be a man, B, believe in the existence of a supreme being or quote-unquote grand architect of the universe and the immortality of the soul, and you also can't be an atheist, which I found interesting. So it sounds like religion to me, but I digress. There are 3 levels in the hierarchy, which include apprentice, fellow of the craft, and master mason. From there, some lodges can have hundreds of different degrees or small levels that must be achieved before moving on to the next big level. This is most common in countries where the original British methodology is still highly sacred, and being a member is much more of an all-in commitment rather than a social opportunity. Purely English Masons are completely prohibited from being involved in any other group pulling from the Masons' ideas or traditions, and they can be suspended for doing so. There are also secret handshakes for each level. Actually, that's the most searched question on Google, or something along those lines. People just really wanted to know if the Freemasons have secret handshakes, and I'm here to tell you that they do. So many different handshakes. I'm so glad I could help clear the air on that, but yes, they do exist. In the US, being a member is mostly about the social aspect and being a part of something. History professor Mark Schmeller from Syracuse University stated in a History.com article, "It's a way for professional men, newspaper editors, and politicians to kind of get to know one another. So if you are embarking on a political career, it's a pretty good idea to join a Masonic lodge." There are a lot of different secret symbols that the Freemasons use to communicate and perform rituals, and the most widely recognized symbol is the square and compasses, which displays a builder's square and a compass. For those who don't know, I didn't either, a builder's square is basically a tool used to measure angles. It was also apparently a real big Home Depot-esque retail store based out of Antonio, Texas. The more you know. There is a G in the middle of this symbol that has conflicting opinions on what it actually represents. Some thinks it stands for geometry, which to me personally, there's no way there's no way someone thought geometry and then they just put a G. That doesn't make sense. Others think it stands for Grand Architect of the Universe, or their God. The second symbol is the all-seeing eye, which to me kind of looks like the Illuminati symbol, I'm not gonna lie. Some think it is a nod toward the Eye of Horus from Greek mythology. Others think that it was installed as a symbol after the dollar bill was updated to include the image. According to the George Washington Masonic National Museum, which I had no idea existed, it is meant to represent the all-seeing eye of the Supreme Architect. There is also a beehive, which is meant to represent working together as a community. There's not really a story for that one. That's pretty much all I got. But it's succinct. It's to the point. The Catholic Church actually prohibits that any Freemason member be a member of the church. In the 19th century, they were even called the Synagogue of Satan by the Vatican. In 1983, the church said, "Their principles have always been considered irreconcilable with the doctrine of the church, and therefore membership in them remains forbidden. The faithful who enroll in Masonic associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion." Despite various changes and progressive minds being a part of the group, membership is still generally exclusive to men. There's a few exceptions, but women have a sister organization called the Order of the Eastern Star. As I mentioned earlier, and surprisingly, atheists are also not allowed to join. And I find it really interesting that that is a harsh requirement that you're not an atheist, despite the fact that the Catholic Church does not allow you to be affiliated with that group. But this brings me to my first story, and it relates to the secrets that the Freemasons swear to protect with their lives upon becoming a member, as well as the organization's relationship to the Catholic Church. The story was brought to my attention by Professor John Dickey of the University College of London. And this is the story of John Custos. John Custos was a dealer of precious stones, and on March 14th, 1743, he was grabbed, handcuffed, and taken to the Holy Office of the Inquisition in Lisbon while he was leaving a coffee house, with the public reasoning being that he had stolen a diamond. His head was shaved, and he was stripped besides his underwear. He was placed in a dungeon where he was forced to stay silent to kind of allow for a spiritual awakening and begin to instill the sense of fear of the torture that he was about to endure. Some prisoners in this prison would be strangled. Others who were further disobedient would be set on fire or go through other horrific methods of torture. John was a master of the nearby lodge, and all of the following events had occurred because a woman who knew him to be the master had confessed and also believed that all Masons were, quote, monsters in nature who perpetrated the most shocking crimes. And she confessed that to a priest in an area that, under the Pope, was not allowed to host Mason lodges. John initially experienced a more open and almost kinder interaction with those at the Holy Office, but he came to realize that nothing he said mattered and his fate was sealed. This was all just kind of superficial for show. Eventually, he was called from his cell and questioned by the president of the Holy Office. Basically, John was charged with infringing on the Pope's orders because he was involved with the Freemasons organization, which was, of course, banned by the Catholic Church. John refused to reveal any of the Freemasons' secrets of rituals and meetings and was subject to the worst forms of torture. I'm going to read a big block of text from John that he later wrote in a book he published in 1746. If you're squeamish with things that involve pain and torture, I highly recommend that you skip maybe 15 to 30 seconds ahead. I was instantly conveyed to the torture room, built in form of a square tower, where no light appeared but what 2 candles gave. And to prevent the dreadful cries and shocking groans of the unhappy victims from reaching the ears of the other prisoners, the doors are lined with a sort of quilt. The reader will naturally suppose that I must be seized with horror when, at my entering this infernal place, I saw myself, on a sudden, surrounded by 6 wretches, who, after preparing the tortures, stripped me naked all to linen drawers, when, laying me on my back, they began to lay hold of every part of my body. First, they put around my neck an iron collar, which was fastened to the scaffold. They then fixed a ring to each foot, and this being done, they stretched my limbs with all their might. They next wound 2 ropes around each arm and 2 round each thigh, which ropes passed under the scaffold through holes made for that purpose, and were all drawn tight at the same time by 4 men, upon a signal made for this purpose. There is more that I found in this source, but it is really disturbing and triggering. So if you want to read his full excerpt, I will link the source in the description, but I'm not going to read any more. He was released in 1744 by order of the British Prime Minister because he was basically a British citizen being tortured in Lisbon, which, should not have happened by jurisdiction laws. He was ordered to leave Portugal, which, why wouldn't he? And the Freemasons proudly used John as an example of their dedication to secrecy. There have been some incredibly notable members involved in the Freemasons, including George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Henry Clay, and Andrew Jackson. As you might be able to tell, quite a few presidents. 13 out of the 39 men who signed the Constitution were Freemasons. And this is a completely random sidebar, I swear, but while I was researching this, I stumbled across an article about how Donald Trump touched a magic orb from the Church of Satan with the king of Saudi Arabia and the president of Egypt. I don't know how I ended up there, but I don't really want to give Donald Trump the time of day, but I might look into that because, what even is that? Anyways, the American political system has always been primarily based in 2 parties, with the option for third parties to run as well, despite none of them really ever gaining enough votes to actually be elected into office. However, there is often heavy input from third parties on America's politics, despite none being president. This idea and power hold that the Freemasons had on American politics would start to become really rocky after the case of William Morgan. On September 11th, 1826, William Morgan was arrested by a group of drunk Masons for an alleged non-payment of a loan and for, quote-unquote, stealing a shirt and tie he had borrowed from a local tavern owner. He was bailed out the same day by his publisher. Later that day, however, he was arrested again for not paying a $2 loan bill. On the morning of September 12th, 1826, William Morgan was let out of jail by the jailer's wife, who had been convinced to do so by Freemason members, with Lowton Lawson heading the group. He was held against his will for 2 days and never seen again. This story was huge in New York because of how the Freemasons seemed to walk above the law. Historian Andrew Burt said, "Everybody loves a good conspiracy story, and that was the initial spark. Headlines, outrage, crimes, a murder. It didn't take long before a movement was born." William Morgan was born in 1774 in the Culpeper Colony of Virginia, which is in Richmond. He was a stonecutter, bricklayer, storekeeper, and author. He is also described to be a heavy drinker and a gambler. The Freemasons were not fancied by everyone in America, so he was known as an anti-Mason, and their goal was to bring down the Freemasons organization. His disappearance and assumed murder sparked the most intense movement against the Freemasons in America. An interesting little fact about Morgan is that he told people he served as captain in the War of 1812, and while the name William Morgan is in the reports for the military, no William Morgan is listed to have ever served as captain. Just to give a nod towards the kind of person he was. He married a 19-year-old, God bless her, and they moved to York in Upper Canada, where he opened a brewery. It would all crumble, though, as a fire would destroy his business, and the family would be left in poverty. He went back to the U.S. and moved from Rochester, New York, to Batavia, where he worked as a stonecutter and bricklayer. Morgan claimed yet another large claim that he had actually become a master mason during his time in Canada, and he may have attended a lodge in Rochester during his short stay there. But it is unconfirmed if he had even passed the first degree of being an apprentice, which is like the base starting position. In 1825, he earned the Royal Arch degree at Leroy's Western Star Chapter number 33, and he declared under oath that he had achieved the 6 degrees required prior to earning this one. It was never confirmed if he did actually receive these 6, but most assume that this was also a lie because no one knows what lodge he would have received them from, and there are no records with him earning them. He unsuccessfully attempted to found and join other lodges in Batavia, but was denied and not taken seriously due to his drinking and gambling habits, as well as his shaky truths. Some didn't believe he was a Mason in the first place. At this point, he would be considered an anti-Mason, and he would publish a book called Illustrations of Masonry that detailed all of the secrets and sacred rituals of the organization. Morgan boasted that a prominent local newspaper publisher, David Cadmiller, had given him a cushy advance for the book. The two entered into a $500,000 penal bond to guarantee that the book would be published. When you become a Mason, you put your hand on the Bible and declare that you will not reveal any passwords, handshakes, rituals, other secret happenings of the lodges, or anything else along those lines. So when Morgan publicly claimed he would be releasing a book uncovering all of this, the Masons publicly denounced him, claiming that he broke that bond that he swore on the Bible. There were also attempts to set fire to David Miller's newspaper office due to his connection to Morgan and the anticipated book. This is when the events I mentioned of him getting arrested multiple times and bailed and let out occur. It is widely believed that he was taken by carriage to Fort Niagara, taken out on a boat, and pushed over the edge where he likely drowned. In 1827, an extremely decomposed body washed up on the shores of Lake Ontario and was believed to be William Morgan's. The Freemasons denied that he had even been killed, claiming they had simply paid him to leave the country. In fact, a missing Canadian man named Timothy Monroe was identified by his wife to have been the body that washed up on the shore. There are reports that Morgan was seen after this, but none of them were ever confirmed. The Freemasons suspected of Morgan's murder, Lowton Lawson, Eli Bruce, Colonel Edward Sawyer, and Nicholas G. Chesbrough, were tried and convicted in January 1827. Despite being tried for a potential or attempted murder, there was no hard evidence. So, and I don't really know what a quote unquote potential murder case would look like if there was no evidence. So it was all circumstantial. But they were tried for potential murder, and they all served between 1 month and 2 year sentences. Nothing super punishing. Everyone against the Freemasons were really upset about the outcome of this trial because the 5 Masons had basically just gotten away with murder. The story of William Morgan's death, and if not more the outcome of his murder trial, would be the instigating factor in the fall of the Freemasons' all-powerful hold on the U.S. political system. The public decided they would no longer vote for any candidates with relations to Masons, and the social awakening spread from New York across the U.S. In 1828, there was a huge surge in anti-Masonic parties winning political elections because people were just done with Freemason influence. When Quincy Adams was running for president in 1828, he stated, "I am not, never was, and never shall be a Freemason." Adams then lost the election and ended up joining the anti-Masonic party for a while. Just after this time, there was a period of social chaos where there was a big overturn of long-standing groups and ideologies being replaced with new ideas. Mark Cheatham, a history professor at Cumberland University, said, "During the 1830s in particular, you have sort of a mixing of anti-Masonic conspiracy theories with anti-Catholic conspiracy theories with anti-Mormon conspiracy theories. Outside forces that are trying to manipulate the American people and the U.S. government for the benefit of the elite few." To kind of sum all this up is a great YouTube comment that I read from someone whose, I think, grandfather was a Freemason. The commenter wrote that their grandfather had said, "The secret of the Freemasons is that there is no secret at all." So that is all I have on the Freemasons. I really thought I would find more sketchy things, but I did a lot of digging and I couldn't really find a lot. So if anyone has any stories from relatives who were in it or old accounts, let me know, because I'm really curious, because I couldn't find anything on the internet that was super damning besides John Custos and William Morgan's stories. And it has been a hot second since we looked at Reddit, so we're going to look at an Am I the Asshole post from Reddit. Am I the asshole for not encouraging my daughter to share with my niece? Yesterday was my daughter's first birthday. I'm assuming it was her first birthday party. Not first, I think she was older than 1. We didn't do anything much, but my mom and sister came to visit and my niece came too. For my daughter's birthday, I bought her a few little bits, but her main present was a foam ball pit with little plastic balls. My daughter absolutely loves the ball pit. She got in it straight away and loves kicking her legs in the balls. Sorry, I swear I'm an adult. My niece also loves the ball pit, and I've got no problem with her also playing with it. But my daughter gets really mad when my niece also sits in it with her. It's not really big enough for both of them, and my daughter gets very frustrated and angry. She was crying and generally upset. I asked my niece to get out for a bit and let my daughter play in it, seeing as it's her present. My sister said I shouldn't have told her not to play in it with her daughter, and my daughter has to learn to share. I told my sister that my daughter absolutely does not need to share her birthday present, and if she wants to play in it, she should be allowed to without my niece bothering her. My sister called me selfish and an a-hole, but the way I see it is, it's my child's birthday. She should be able to play with her presents by herself if she wants. It's meant for my daughter, not for my niece. It's her present, and if she doesn't want to share it, she shouldn't have to. This morning, my sister is still insisting I'm an a-hole. Am I? This one's a tough one, I will say, because I do understand the aunt's argument of this Redditor's daughter needing to be able to share, but it is also her birthday present, and I don't know. I feel like if it were me, I would want my kid to be able to play with her present. I think that's the way I should approach this. So if it were my child, I would say let the kid have her ball pit. That's hers. So I guess I would say you're not the asshole. Yeah. Also, I don't know how old her this daughter is, because the niece is supposedly 7, but there's no age for the daughter. So if she's like significantly younger, then she also shouldn't have to share. But yeah, that's what I would say. I would say you're not an asshole. If it was like a play date, maybe be a little more like, let's share. But if it's her birthday party and it's specifically her birthday present, you shouldn't have to. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you guys also, if you agree or disagree, and why. That is all I have for today's episode. If you like what you hear, please go ahead and give the pod 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, or leave a review or a comment. All of those things will help push the podcast to a wider audience, and that way more people can hear all of these stories and all of these cases, which would be super cool. If you want podcast updates and the pictures that I post for each episode, you can follow me on Instagram at thesocialbutterflywtrh. And if you have any cases, conspiracies, or historical moments that you would like reported on the pod, you can email me at wtrhappened@gmail.com. I would love to hear what you all recommend. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.